2017 is coming to an end. We do have the CFP championship game on Monday. So that means it's time to take a look at the way too early rankings for 2018.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be here breaking down the top 10 teams is how we see it here at Chat Sports Studios. So we're going to go ahead and take it first to number 10, and we have Penn State.
Yeah, and so this one is really thinking about what they return, and it is that quarterback, Trace McSorley, had a great bowl game and really was kind of overshadowed by his running back, Saquon Barkley. Trace McSorley returning next season, he is going to be the catalyst for this team to be in another top 10 season for the third year in a row. And with that being said, I really like what I see out of Penn State next year.
And I have to agree with you on that one. I think with this returning Penn State team, I think Trace McSorley is really going to mean a lot to this team, but it's going to be interesting to see what he can do. You know, he's lost his offensive coordinator. He's now lost in back-to-back years his best receiving option, and now he's losing the best player he has ever played with in Saquon Barkley. I'm interested to see what this Penn State defense is going to look like next year, though. They're losing a lot of guys in the secondary, and they might also be losing their defensive captain, Jason Kabinda, on the middle linebacker side. We'll see if he ends up coming back. We do not know for certain yet if Kabinda is going to come back on this defense, but I think what we're going to see with this recruiting class coming in for James Franklin, I think Micah Parsons is going to be huge for this defense coming in. So way too early top 10. I like having Penn State at number 10, though. Putting this much pressure on Trace McSorley, you know, a small quarterback, not a lot of athleticism, not a lot of speed. I think taking away his weapons is going to hurt him a lot.
Going to be his third year as a starter. You should expect him to kind of take the bull by the horns. And we've seen this. So Baker Mayfield is a good example of what I think Trace McSorley could be. I don't think he's going to win the Heisman Trophy by any means, but
Trace McSorley, yeah.
He has the kind of same kind of game. He's a little bit undersized, moves a little bit, can run around, can make plays with his feet. But remember, Baker Mayfield lost most of his skill position players from last season, still led him to a playoff berth, still won the Heisman Trophy. So I think that's what Trace McSorley is looking at. And just like Baker Mayfield, he's got some coaching turmoil, right? Joe Moorhead, his offensive coordinator the last 2 seasons, he's been the starting quarterback, has moved on. He's at Mississippi State, the coach. So with that, Penn State is your number 10, guys. But I just want to talk about, we're going to talk about a couple more teams from that Big Ten East. This Big Ten East is stacked. We've got 3 teams in the top 10. We got a couple other teams that are going to be in the top 25.
One of them we're going to have a nice argument over because I still don't get it.
Well, you are crazy.
All right, let's take it to number 9. We have the Auburn Tigers. So their quarterback is coming back, and Jarrett Stidham, he could possibly go pro, but we do expect him to come back. However, Kerryon Johnson did just declare today for the NFL draft.
I think Jarrett Stidham is the key here because we saw him this year when he got hot at the end of the year. So did Auburn. That Auburn team turned into one of the best teams in the country because of Jarrett Stidham, and as soon as he cooled off, so did the Auburn Tigers. But I think going into next year, he's also a dark horse Heisman candidate. I went into this year, if you go back and check the Chat Sports college predictions for this year, I had him listed as a dark horse Heisman candidate this season because I really am a believer in Jarrett Stidham. I think he's a fantastic quarterback. I don't know about the NFL, but if you're looking at what you need out of a college quarterback, especially in the SEC, what do you need? You need don't turn the ball over, be able to convert on third down, and also be able to convert in the red zone. A lot of the times you don't need SEC quarterbacks to get a ton of yardage in the middle of the field. Usually that's for the running game. He does everything you need from an SEC quarterback perfectly, and I think he's going to drive the team next year.
It's so remarkable how many big-time high school quarterback recruits switch teams, transfer, have success elsewhere. I mean, he went to Baylor, transferred out of there, sad season. Now he's had remarkable success this year. Who are the 2 teams in the playoff in 2017? Georgia, Alabama, who they lose to, Jarrett Stidham and Auburn. So they're sitting there at 9, but they have everything in front of them. I don't think there's anything stopping Auburn next year from competing for a national title, just like they did this year. They were 1 game away from being in the college football playoff if they would have beat Georgia.
Losing Kerryon Johnson, though, is going to be really big for them. They need to find that playmaker on the offensive side of the ball that can really change things. They have a good receiving core, but Kerryon Johnson was that X factor in every single game that he could just randomly go for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns on you, and you just lose the game. They need that kind of playmaker.
I think that 10-4 record is a little bit deceiving.
Yes.
One of those losses was to Clemson early on before they really kind of had their feet under them with Stidham. And then, guys, they lost a rematch versus Georgia, who they had already beat, and then kind of were just, I don't think they were really in the game against UCF. It was the consolation prize. It was the Peach Bowl. And so with that, I think it's more like a 11-2 team, not a 10-4 team. So that's why they are our number 9 team in our early top 10 for 2018.
Alrighty, if you're just joining us, we are breaking down Chat Sports predicted top 10 of 2018. We have Auburn at number 9. Let's take it to number 8. James kind of hinted to it earlier. Another Big Ten team, and that is Michigan State.
Well, Harris, I'm going to let you argue about this one for a second, but I was adamant about Michigan State being in this, and I actually had them a lot higher. I had a couple notches higher. I believe I had them initially at 6. They are, other than that Ohio State game this year, they played phenomenal. They lost one to Notre Dame where they kind of got beat up a little bit there too. But if they don't lose to Northwestern, I believe in triple overtime, they're playing in that Ohio State game for a chance to go to the Big Ten Championship, play Wisconsin for kind of a playoff berth. Following a 3-9 season last year, nobody had a better turnaround from 3-9 to 10-3. Brian Lewerke, no matter what you want to say, he's had multiple back-to-back 400-yard games. He had a great bowl game. Really the only knock against him is that Ohio State game this year. It's the only knock you had against him this entire season. And they were one of the youngest teams in the country this year. So many teams use youth as an excuse to lose games. Michigan State used it kind of as an excuse last year, but they had youth and they're returning sophomores, juniors, and then a lot of these guys are going to be seniors next year. But they're going to be go from one of the youngest teams to one of the most seasoned teams. Tons of returning starters. And so with that, I am super excited about Michigan State in 2018.
I'm on the other side of them because it's that 3-9 season. I understand that they rebounded really well to 10-3. I actually think that has more to do with the coaching than the actual talent on this team. But I think over the course of a couple seasons, look, if you look at the Michigan State recruiting classes over the past couple years, you just see that if anything slips up, the entire team come crack. 3-9 last year, and then the past 2 years, if you look at the recruiting classes they have coming in, the team is super young, yes, but the overall talent level that they've been bringing in has not really been up to par. And I know you like Brian, I know you like Lewerke, can make plays with his legs, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to throw the football, and he's struggled heavily being able to throw the football. A lot of the times with his offense, they try to base it around a lot of high percentage throws, screen passes, slot receivers, a lot of slant patterns as well, but he doesn't move the ball well down the field. The only time they were ever really able to dominate teams in the offensive side of the ball was when they were able to run the ball. As soon as any team was able to stop them from running the ball, like Ohio State did, they got blown off the football field. They got blown off again by Notre Dame as well, and then they got killed by Northwestern as well because Northwestern stopped the run.
Killed by Northwestern.
They should have easily beaten that
overtime.
team.
But you're saying the word killed, and you're losing credibility with our lovely audience here on Chat Sports. They did not get killed. They should have won the game.
Look at the teams that they beat this year was when they were able to run the ball successfully. I think teams know how to beat them. Now, the Washington State team that they beat in the ball game didn't have their starting quarterback, Luke Falk, and another team who, mind you, couldn't stop the run all year.
Getting a little heated.
Just want to throw this out here really quick.
Excuse us.
Brian Lewerke, 417 passing attempts, 60% completion, 2,800 yards, 20 touchdowns, only 7 picks, added 600 yards on the ground, Harris, and another 5 touchdowns. Brian Lewerke, I'm saying next year, he's the Big Ten Player of the Year next year.
You guys throw out in comments, do you think Michigan State is ranked too high at number 8? We want to know, but we're going to keep moving on here. Let's go to number 7. And this is the Oklahoma Sooners, and big gaping hole that they're going to have trying to fill Baker Mayfield's spot. And James, that's why we have him so low. Let's talk about
this is the reputation rating for me. I didn't think that I really believed truly that they were going to be ranked this high. I was outvoted. This is a very democratic process. A lot of people had input on that. Some people were saying they want them as high as 3 or 4 because it's Oklahoma and they've got starting quarterback is gone, but that's fine. We just put anybody in. They're losing a lot of talent. People say they're going to be young. If you lose Baker Mayfield, that is as much talent as I need to see to drop somebody from 3, 4, 5 where some people want them. I would have had him more like 9 or 10 to be frank, guys. We've got him at 7. That's kind of the AP style voting we do here at Chat Sports. Everybody has a voice, and with that, I think Oklahoma's going to take a big step back next year.
You and I are actually going to agree with this one, James. I also think that because it comes down to this. Is Kyler Murray Baker Mayfield?
No.
No, he is most certainly not. In fact, I'm not even sure. I just complained about how Brian Lewerke can't throw the ball. I'm not convinced that Kyler Murray can throw the ball. The dude, we talk about short quarterbacks succeeding in college football. He's 5'11". At some point, there has to be a limit to what can be successful in terms of height as a quarterback. I know that you have a Paxton Lynch in the NFL who's bad, even though he's 6'8", and Brock Osweiler is short. You are never going to be able to convince me until I see it that a 5'11" quarterback that isn't Johnny Manziel is going to be able to succeed in college football. Look, he has great weapons coming back in Ronnie Anderson and CeeDee Lamb. But at the end of the day, this is the Big 12. Baker Mayfield was the perfect Big 12 quarterback.
Big 12 football. Brett knows what I'm talking about.
Is Kyler Murray that guy who can replace him? I don't think so.
I'm gonna go agree with you, Harris. I think number 7 is where they could end up. I do see them struggling early on offense. I don't think this is the consistent Bob Stoops plug and play. No, every next man up like you've had for the last 15 plus years. But, Lincoln Riley, Large Game Lincoln, that I coined the nickname, let me down yesterday in the second half. And I think he's going to struggle in the second year. I don't see them kind of, going into October, November in the top 2-3 in the country like they have for most of the last 15 years. And so I see them maybe dropping 1 or 2 early, and they're really not hitting their peak until end of October into November.
And one more thing about this before we move on from Oklahoma. When we were going through a lot of this season, we were talking about a lot of the younger head coaches who, were doing so great this year. Scott Frost, Matt Campbell, this and that. Look, Lincoln Riley this year was handed a top 5 team in the country. And sure, they played well, they played up to par, but he was still given that team. Let's see what he can do, because now that Kyler Murray's in there, they're going to have to change the entire offense. We're going to see what Lincoln Riley's really made of next year.
Reminds me a lot of 2002 Miami when Butch Davis went to the pros. They were handed that thing fell apart after about 3 years after it was done.
Yeah.
So we will see how large game Lincoln does. Speaking of Miami.
There you go. Took my transition, James. The Miami Hurricanes are coming in at number 6, and they are returning their starting quarterback, so we do see them being mildly successful next season.
I am so excited for this Miami team until I saw that Malik Brazier was coming back. I was so close to being really excited, but do you know what's going to be great about them next year? They are going to be able to take the ball out of his hands so often. Travis Homer is coming back. They have the #1 running back in the state of Florida coming in this year, and Lorenzo Lingard, who James and I both agree with will probably end up being the best freshman in the entire ACC next year. So they're going to be able to do kind of what Georgia was able to do this year. We saw with Jake Fromm coming in, they had those 2 senior running backs, the two-headed monster of Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, and that was what drove their offense. They are going to bring a really tough offense this year, a great offensive line like they returned from this year. I am so excited to see what Lorenzo Lingard and Travis Homer can do. Mark Walton's moving on to the NFL. I think this offense is going to be a little bit different than what we usually see. No air raid attack. Keep the ball out of Malik Brazier's hands, and you'll be just fine.
Well, I mean, they really got to hope that this whole turnover chain that they made so famous this year, which, by the way, is really cool. I think it's one of those things that we'll be talking about 10, 15 years from now. Be like, hey, remember that turnover chain back in 17? That was pretty cool. But I think Miami has a lot of talent. I like the coach. I always liked Mark Richt when he was at Georgia, and I think he's going to do really good things at Miami. But they don't have the potent offense, I think, to be in the top 5 next year. And frankly, as far as the game against Wisconsin, they kind of were exposed against Wisconsin. Wisconsin did almost anything they wanted on offense. They made Alex Hornibrook look like look like an NFL quarterback, which he is not, by the way. They let a true freshman wide receiver score 3 touchdowns, and Wisconsin basically did whatever they want against them. So Miami needs to earn my respect back going into next year.
That's fair.
They start the year, guys. I'm going to look at the schedule. I'm pretty sure I'm saying this at the top. Here in Dallas against LSU, September 1st, opening game in the Cowboy Advocare Classic, they call it now.
All right, it's going to be a great game. Before we get into the top 5, let's go ahead and recap what we have for you guys so far. We got the Nittany Lions coming in at number 10, Auburn at 9, Michigan State at 8. Oklahoma at 7, no Baker Mayfield for them. And then the Miami Hurricanes coming in at number 6. Let's take it to number 5, though. We got the Wisconsin Badgers. Hornibrook will be returning. Also some great returners on offense and defense. And we expect big things from them.
I expect big things from Jonathan Taylor. In fact, I expect Jonathan Taylor to be the best player in the country next year. I don't think there's a reason he shouldn't. To be totally honest, if you look at what he's able to do as a freshman, the offensive line isn't going anywhere. Wisconsin's always going to have a great offensive line. So the only thing that's going to factor into him changing, he's just getting a year older, which means he's just going to get a year better, which you would know he probably should have been in New York. Despite my love for Lamar Jackson, I can admit to you that Jonathan Taylor had a better season than Lamar Jackson did. Look, he's going to have one of the best seasons in college football next year. He's going to drive Wisconsin forward. I think they might end up with the same record as they did this year, if not maybe a better one. They might end up as a top 4 team next year.
If they end up with the same record, I think the committee will put them in the playoff.
I think they would have to. I mean, that'll be 3 years in a row now. Crazy success for a Wisconsin team who, I know they don't have a national championship to their name and they don't play as in crazy of a conference, but they aren't Clemson yet. But 3 years in a row of fantastic records in a really tough conference. We need to start asking ourselves if Wisconsin is one of the top 10 programs in the country right now.
Well, I mean, it's not just 3 years, no, Harris. It's really the last 30 years. Wisconsin has been consistently a top 15 team. They don't get the respect that some of these other more flashy schools. They play a lot of those noon Big Ten games that no one's watching. So with that, they play a little bit under the radar. But think about this: 13-1. Has anyone other than Kirby Smart kind of come in and done a better job in his first 2-3 years as a coach than Paul Chryst has at Wisconsin? He goes from, I think it was 8-5, 9-4 his first year. Then he gets the 11-win season last year, up to 13-1 this year. Guys, I think there's a case to be made that the Big Ten, after seeing what I saw at Clemson yesterday specifically, the Big Ten kind of got robbed.
For sure.
Outside of Michigan, they were 7-0 in the other games in the playoff season. Wisconsin, a big win over Miami. Ohio State had a win over the Pac-12 champion. And then Penn State had a big win. So with that, I think the Big Ten was snubbed a little bit. Clearly, Wisconsin wouldn't have been the team in because they lost to Ohio State. But starting 12-0, then losing a game to Ohio State, winning your bowl game against a Miami team that for most of the year was in the top 3 or 4, once October 1st game, is a phenomenal accomplishment. Just a couple more things on them. Hornibrook is only going to be a junior next year. This guy is going to win the J.T. Barrett Award in 2019 as the guy who's been in college for 30 years. I mean, I feel like he's been around forever.
Seriously.
He's just finishing up his redshirt sophomore year. They're going to have maybe the best kind of offense in the country as far as skill positions. They've got Taylor and they've got Davis coming back. Davis is the guy who scored 3 touchdowns yesterday. He's a true freshman. You have a junior and a sophomore, and then you've got the running back coming back as well. So they are going to be stacked on offense next year. I see this team putting up 50 points a game.
All right, can't wait to watch the Badgers in 2018. Let's take it to number 4 now. We have the Georgia Bulldogs making an appearance. Their quarterback is returning, but their running backs are gone.
This is where the Harris Rubenstein crusade of Georgia running backs starts, because I understand that Chubb and Michelle are fantastic, both senior running backs, maybe the best senior running back combo that we maybe have ever seen in college football, certainly one of the best in a very, very long time. But I will say this. Do not sleep on DeAndre Swift and do not sleep on Zamir White, because not only are those 2 players fantastic, they are also very similarly built to the running backs who are leaving. You have DeAndre Swift, who can take over the role of Sonny Michel as a good receiving back, who can also make great plays in the draw game. And you have Zamir White, who's a little bit more of a bruiser, who actually has more pure speed than Nick Chubb does. To be totally honest, Nick Chubb is a great running back, but that knee injury that he had sapped most all of his speed. The last 4 games of this season was really the only time that we saw Nick Chubb get his speed back. Look, this Georgia offense next year might end up being one of the 5 best in the country. They're returning their starting quarterback, both of their starting wide receivers, a 5-star running back who was behind 2 of the best senior running backs in the country, and oh yeah, they have the number 1 running back in the country coming out this year, and Justin Fields.
Yeah.
What?
Well, Fields should.
It's going to be crazy.
I said that on our recruiting show. Fields is an opportunity to take a starting job from a national championship game quarterback, which is crazy to think. They've also got Jacob Eason, so they are ripe with riches at quarterback there at Georgia. Obviously, we said running back this year. They'll continue to have that next year. They have a super weak schedule for being an SEC team next year. I just wanted to bring this up. This is why I was okay with putting them at number 4, although I do think they'll take a step back next year, in my opinion. But because of the schedule, they're out of conference. Austin Peay, they've got Middle Tennessee, and then later in the season, that week before the final game, they always have the cupcake, UMass. And their only tough game across conference is against Auburn on November 10th. I mean, this is a cupcake schedule for Georgia. I don't see them losing maybe not any games in the regular season.
And one more thing about this Georgia team, even with that running game, they might just have the best offensive line in the country next year. Low key. Just keep an eye out.
See Georgia at number 4. At number 3, we do have the Buckeyes. They aren't returning J.T. Barrett, but James, you're a big fan. You're a big fan of Dwayne Haskins. Their next guy.
Joke early in the office, breaking. J.T. Barrett gets a 6th year of eligibility.
He's a White Walker.
Why not, right?
He's a White Walker.
He never goes away. But finally, he is gone. And J.K. Dobbins kind of came in and was one of the major stars in the country as a true freshman this year. Really kind of came out of the gate against Indiana in their first game, stole the job away from Mike Weber. Mike Weber, who might go pro just because he's not number 1. I mean, just because he lost his job at Dobbins as a redshirt sophomore. And so they are coming back. But Dwayne Haskins really showed in the second half of that Michigan game that he, doesn't get, intimidated by the pressure. He doesn't get, a formidable defense is not going to, make him play bad. And he went up against Michigan when they were down, 4 points in the middle of the third quarter. J.T. Barrett goes down. What does he do? Instantly leads him to a touchdown. Played in slow motion in that game, guys. He seemed like the game was coming to him. He wasn't getting throttled at all. It's got great size. And from everything we've heard for the last 2 seasons, it was like, oh, you think J.T. Barrett's good? Wait till you see this kid Haskins. And we saw it in the Michigan game. So with Urban Meyer, you look at his entire career, he's only had a few quarterbacks, by the way. He's been coaching forever. He's had like 5 quarterbacks. But when he gets a quarterback, they play marvelously for 3-4 years. He always has these longtime stars, Braxton Miller, Tim Tebow, and J.T. Barrett. Going before that, Alex Smith. He always has the quarterbacks. He keeps them around. And then Haskins is going to be no different.
I have a name for you, though. You keep bringing up Dwayne Haskins. Watch out for Tate Martell.
Tate Martell will not play.
Watch out, I'm just saying. Watch out. Tate Martell might just come out of nowhere.
Tate Martell makes you look like Shaquille O'Neal. He's like 5'6".
All right. We'll talk more about Haskins a little later. Let's take it to number 2 now. We have the Clemson Tigers making an appearance, returning a lot of guys, including their quarterback, Kelly Bryant.
The number one, I guess that's kind of the biggest question for Clemson is that, Kelly Bryant did have a good year with Clemson. I mean, not really with his arms, more that he was able to run the offense. The running game was good, and they were able to score enough points to win. But look, you now have Kelly Bryant on this team and a 5-star quarterback behind him in Hunter Johnson, and yet another 5-star quarterback behind him in Trevor Lawrence, who a lot of people are basically calling the best high school quarterback recruit since Andrew Luck. So we don't really know what we're going to be able to do with this Clemson offense because we don't know who's going to start at quarterback. But I will say this, Travis Etienne, who's going to be their running back this year, true freshman this year, going to be a sophomore next year. He's going to be the leader of that offense if Kelly Bryant is the quarterback. But I think they might need to make a change of quarterback. I think Hunter Johnson is better than Kelly Bryant. We saw that Kelly Bryant couldn't beat a great defense. He struggled as well multiple times this year throwing the ball. Hunter Johnson is a fantastic QB. I think you need to ask questions about who should start a QB.
I think it's going to be Kelly Bryant. I don't think there's any question about it. I think he's going to be a Heisman candidate. We'll talk about him in a few seconds. Could be, because Harris, name me a quarterback that has stepped in after such a legend and led his team back to the playoff. They were number 1, number 2.
But was that him or was that the team that he was on?
Well, think about the game they lost before the playoffs. It was the game he didn't play in. So I do think it was him. I actually think he's going to be a first-round draft pick. Tom Downey, our NFL draft expert, will tell me I'm crazy. I like what I see out of him.
He can't throw the ball.
He throws a great ball. I think he's limited by listen, when you are breaking in a new quarterback after having the same guy for a couple championship-level seasons, you kind of take it easy. You throttle it back for a while. You're going to see them open up the offense next year. Clemson has just got an embarrassment of riches coming back all around Kelly Bryant. He is going to be a phenomenal quarterback. I see him being a first rounder in the 2019 NFL draft. And with the recruits they have coming, you're going to see quite a bit of these guys getting on the field. Clemson and Alabama really have separated themselves from college football as far as the consistent programs that can go in and out year after year after year after year after year. It's really the same program every single year the last 4 or 5 years.
To quote James Yoder, you crazy dog.
All right.
You crazy.
All right, I might be.
All right, coming in at number 1 to absolutely no one's surprise is the Alabama Crimson Tide. They are returning their starting quarterback, and we predict them keeping their spot at number 1.
Bo Scarborough returning for his age 33 season because no one really knows how old Bo Scarborough is. But, this Alabama defense next year is going to be absolutely insane. I'm so excited to see what their defense is going to be able to turn into. I think he's absolutely fantastic. We'll see what happens with Jalen Hurts, though. They do have a very talented Tua Tagovailoa. I can never say his last name correctly, but he is coming back next year. And at this point, he has so much talent with both his arms and his legs. Jalen Hurts might not actually be the starter next year. We'll see. I have no idea yet because, look, he is limited as a quarterback. We saw against that game in the game against Clemson, he is limited as a thrower, but I love Jalen Hurts. I think that he is so calm and so cool and collected to be the number 1 quarterback for an Alabama championship team now 2 years in a row. I think there's value there. I think he's a great leader. Give Tua 1 more year. I think Jalen has it.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts, by the way, 2 losses as starting quarterback of Alabama in 2 years. And I think he's going to come back next year. I do believe that your boy Tua got in, should look phenomenal as a quarterback this year.
Time.
There's going to be a true quarterback battle there, but all in, I think Hurts is going to end up winning that matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if Alabama kind of just had one of their all-time years next year because you have a 3-year starter coming back after 4 straight years in the playoffs. They're going to have so many guys. Think about the embarrassment of riches they're going to have at running back if they all come back. Bo Scarborough, you're going to have Damian Harris, who is turning into a stud, who was maybe on my list going to pop into the Heisman after a few of those games he had in the middle of the season. And then you've got Najee Harris, the number 1 recruit in the country last year, who was getting a ton of play later on. You basically have probably 3 of the best 10 running backs in the country coming back on one roster, not to mention a 3rd-year quarterback, not to mention a stacked team all around. Alabama is without question your number 1 team in our 2018 way too early top 10 in college football.
All right, for those of you just joining us, let's recap what we had. We had Penn State at 10, Auburn at 9, Michigan State at 8, Oklahoma at 7, and Miami at number 6. At 5, we have the Badgers. 4 is Georgia. 3 is Ohio State. 2 is Clemson. And Alabama is number 1. And here are some just missed the top 10. So these are some teams you expect to be good next season, but not quite top 10. That's Stanford, Notre Dame, UCF, which is interesting. I understand they're losing Scott Frost, but an undefeated team nonetheless. Washington, USC, and then TCU.
So what UCF has going for them next year is what maybe only Boise State has had in the last 15 years, which is you have like an undefeated or a really epic season, and you have so many players coming back that you're going to start the season maybe in the top 10 or right outside of it. But if you get off to a 7-8-0 start, people are going to start talking about UCF with all they return. I mean, their offense is so young, such a high-performing offense. If they can start off the year, go 8-0, you might see them at number 5 or 6 by the time we get into middle of October when those college football playoff rankings are revealed.